So I am a last-minute stand-in for my good friend Richard Muirhead, also of Fabric Ventures, that's working with Erik on the board of the foundation, and big supporters of NEAR. I'm a venture partner at Fabric, and I'm based in Lisbon. I live here. My day job is I run Orchid Labs, which is a decentralized VPN on Ethereum. Sorry, guys. But I also do a whole bunch of work in other parts of ecosystems. And I'm in full node with the Mint-based team, so I spend quite a bit of time thinking about NEAR and what's about to be nearly happening. Sorry, I always do that joke.
Yeah. And for those who don't know me, my name is Erik Trautman, and I run the NEAR Foundation. And yeah, basically we're going to jam a little bit on everything, anything, and honestly open to some questions to pop with maybe at the end as well. So I don't know if there's anything that you specifically want to jump into, but I'm interested on your side actually, being involved with Fabric, which is a team that's pushing very actively into Web3. What are you seeing across the ecosystem that's a little bit different from the Web2 world? You've also obviously been deeply involved with Orchid. What does it take to succeed as a startup? I don't know.
Yeah. So I've been doing this blockchain thing for a little while. I was a co-founder of Pantera Capital back in 2013, and did a whole bunch of stuff in peer-to-peer. I guess like 20 years ago in Napster and Nutella kind of days. So I have this little bit of a history in terms of seeing new ecosystems develop and trying to figure out, initially from an investment angle and then as an entrepreneur again, and then now doing investment, trying to figure out what is, how do you move from like a great technology? I have a lot of support, belief in the technologies that's being built here. We spent about a year at Orchid also trying to build our own layer one, like a very private kind of decentralized architecture, but realized that we needed really powerful small zero knowledge provers, so which that technology wasn't available. So we just put everything eventually on Ethereum and also XDAI. The kind of lessons in terms of how you build these layer ones, then how you scale them out into finding their niche and finding what the adoption comes in, has been something that now we're at Fabric and we're supporters of NEAR. We think a lot about. So with the layer one space right now, we've got obviously a lot of liquidity on the main Ethereum and also the EVM family of chains, and then all the punks and the apes and all the kind of the world in the NFT space, and those have become the two big use cases that everyone's kind of coalescing around. These like large DeFi, large NFT sales. As we look at other layer ones, we're also supporters of. We're in Polkadot. We kind of like look at a lot of different cross-chain architectures there. Over time, I see this less as a battle about which layer one is the one that kind of wins them all. I think that's almost like a mistake of this maximalism kind of thinking. You have the Bitcoin maximalists, and you have the Ethereum maximalists, and like kind of EVM maximalists, and you sort of like have this family of behavior where people often get very invested in something and then think through, oh, this is the only thing that can win because I'm in it. And I think you have to abstract out a bit and try and have a much longer view of things. When I've been looking at NEAR, one of the things that's been exciting to me is very fast finality, like cheap transactions, but still with this decentralized architecture that is lacking in, say, some of the kind of layer two chains you see with like the worst offender being something like a Binance Smart Chain, where it's just a cartel of behavior. So some of the areas we've been looking at is bridging of Ethereum and NEAR. We were investors in Aurora. But then for NEAR itself on its own, like in an isolated thing, we've also been looking pretty carefully at some of the NFT minting platforms and sort of the idea of could NEAR be the thing that goes direct to real world use case without having to think about the blockchain at all? And that's clearly a very exciting place for all of us to be worried about. Yep.
Yeah. I'm also pretty interested in, essentially, what's different about what it takes to succeed in this ecosystem? Not necessarily as a layer one protocol, but as a startup building, right? I mean, you have some ingredients that are core every startup needs to get funded. But what's different about being a startup in Web3 that you're seeing from within the portfolio and from your own experiences? Obviously, you're maybe more focused on the infrastructure side, but
yeah, I think so. I spent about 23 years living in San Francisco. I just moved here last year. One of the things that occurred there was both the funding and the hiring ecosystem was just sort of at your doorstep. You just walk down the street and you'd hire a developer, and then walk down the street, get an investor. That's changed now, and I like Balaji's tweet. So he talks a lot about how the internet is a new Silicon Valley, and so what that really means is that your ability to build community and connect to people continuously, not just through the fundraising round or the hiring round, but just kind of continuously establish yourself. I see that as very important to building companies, to building startups in this space. And we're sort of like a very kind of mimetic generation community. We're always like building a meme about this, a meme about that. Is that sort of what that means? Is you're trying to change the way people are thinking about something. So kind of having that initial like, why is this interesting to me? What is this going to do? That kind of like generating that buzz around it, I found is very powerful and quite differentiated. There are kind of parallels to the older models, but I think that's a very important thing. So I think a lot of it is, and as we talked before in London about, and in Paris about, the idea of being kind of friendly to other systems. I think this, I was talking about this maximalist idea, it can take you so far, and maybe if you've got a NBA Top Shop or something, you can kind of succeed on that, but you have to connect. You have to think about the principles. I gave this talk the other day about the principles of decentralization. Decentralization is not just having people in a bunch of places. It's actually connecting to other things. It's connecting not just to other applications in your ecosystem, but thinking, how do you connect outside of that, and what's relevant? You've got this huge wall of liquidity sitting in the EVM chains. How do you bring that over? And we've seen this, we talked about Aurora, but how do we think about NFTs, for example? Maybe it's not that we take apes and punks and make near apes and near punks and then hope for the best. Maybe it's like something different. Maybe it's NFTs being used for tickets, like we see here today, or NFTs being used for software license keys. And if you have this ability to do this on a much cheaper and faster basis and still decentralized, then we can start seeing a different kind of use case. So I don't know. I don't know if there's like significantly different ideas to how you scale these Web3 businesses, but there are certainly some interesting, unique aspects that are emerging.
Yeah,
I should be asking you questions too. You're interviewing me. This is funny.
Yeah.
I like it though. Well, I'm gonna flip it. So if you kind of think about like the Near Foundation, there've been other foundations before, and we've sort of seen like the pros and the cons of different ways of building things, either on a, let's not throw shade on too many things, but you kind of look at like EOS, right? It was like very centralized architecture in the sense, very very centralized. It's kind of like friends of the people who knew the people who ran the validators, and it was a really hot thing for a minute, and then all of a sudden it just kind of like dwindled, and I'm not even sure why it's even being traded anymore. Sorry, EOS holders, but and this is not investment advice, and then you see the Ethereum Foundation, and I have a lot of love for like the kind of the early work they've done and so on, but then you sometimes get this thing as like, well, how is this going? What's going on? It seems sometimes a little chaotic. How do you balance those things of being centralized versus like chaos reigning, and how do you see that working out over time?
That's a totally fair question, and I guess it really kind of works back from both the journey towards decentralization and then again the first principles of like, why are we decentralizing as well. So in terms of the journey, obviously you have to start with a core team and a core idea, and then at some point you take off the rocket boosters and hopefully something is in orbit, and somewhere along the way you've crossed the pin and you've said, okay, well we're pretty decentralized, and then it's kind of a question of, okay, well, like, but why, and like what's effective about this. And I think what I also don't want to throw any shade on any particular model, but I think
I'll do that bit. You just be nice.
Great. I do agree that we've seen effective models and less effective models, and the way that we basically view things at the foundation is, how do we accomplish things indirectly? Our goal is certainly not to drive the ecosystem. Our goal is really to honestly to make ourselves irrelevant over time. It's sort of in a lot of ways it's almost like thinking of like as almost like a VC model, where the foundation is just kind of its portfolio just happens to be everyone who's out there, and then if your portfolio is potentially 100,000 companies, then you have to work forwards and say okay, or work backwards and say okay, but what does it take to get to that point and to make sure that those teams have the support that they need to be successful. And so that's, I think, where actually decentralization comes in as well, which is that often the conversation around why decentralize is oriented a little bit more towards defense. It's things like regulatory come up a lot, but really, actually, I think there's something that's a little bit more like offensive decentralization, and that's obviously not to mean offensive, but it's like using decentralization as a tool to accomplish the goals that we have, and that's where the only way that the foundation can be successful to support 100,000 companies is by making sure that the ecosystem actually supports those teams. The foundation, like if you kick out the leg of the stool that is the foundation, the stool should continue to stand, and not only that, like it shouldn't even shudder. And that's actually the design goal that we're going for. And so I think what we haven't necessarily seen, or I haven't at least seen out there, is a model where the foundation's goal is actually to make itself irrelevant. And that's the way that we've basically structured things, is how over 5 years can we get to the point where the foundation doesn't even need to exist at all. And if we think of things a little bit more of how do you build a country, we're really almost building a nation state, and the nation state needs to be able, like it runs on a free economy. So like there shouldn't be some marketing team that you go to for all the marketing issues that you have. There shouldn't be a single grants program or a single funding opportunity for everyone in the ecosystem, because the entire goal should actually be that you have a free market where all of these things exist because there are great opportunities, because people on both sides are running sustainable businesses that make it great. Like obviously we want to encourage, let's just say as the marketing example, we want to encourage an entire ecosystem of teams and agencies and large, small, supporting startups, supporting large companies who are all integrating up and down, and then connecting them with these 100,000 teams that are operating in the ecosystem. That's the goal. So for us, we're just the starter motor. And then the starter motor, it's kind of it just disengages over time, and the resources should be given to the ecosystem. The resources are, they belong to the ecosystem, and so really our goal is to make ourselves irrelevant through that decentralization. And yeah, you can't do it without it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's some good thoughts there. I'm a big believer in decentralization as a principle, and I've probably left a lot of money on the table as an investor from passing on things I just don't like, but the thing that I've noticed is just over time these systems that are decentralized are not only are more sustainable over time, but do attract these much larger ecosystems of supporters, which in the end makes the whole thing, more sustainable. That kind of flywheel rules. Where do you see the niche for near? Like when you think of the things that are being built out today, and I was, for example, like really interested in some of the sort of recent kind of Stripe integrations I've seen, and looking at my friends at Mintbase and the kind of work that's happening there. And then also, like with the sort of the different programming language framework, and kind of seeing how a lot of developers are saying we really prefer to use this kind of environment. How are you seeing those things go together and say we think this is where it's going? Or like, I'm not asking you to pick a winner here, obviously, as an independent. But if you think about it from a short term and then kind of like holistically, where do you see the sweets? If you were telling someone today is like, hey, you probably should go take a look at this area, what would it be?
Well, that's actually the hard question and the easy question of being basically a general purpose platform, which is you have seen a lot of platforms go out there and aggressively niche down and say, this is the platform where DeFi lives. This is the platform where games live. This is the platform where consumer web lives. And I think for us that's been very difficult, because it feels strange building a general purpose technology and then saying, well, it's a general purpose technology which is designed to support pretty much anything. and then, but no, this is where we're going to start, and it totally flies in the face of conventional wisdom. Like obviously, riches in the niches and that whole philosophy, and it makes it harder to message. And one of the biggest challenges that we've actually had is how do you even message usability? Like it's such an easy thing to say and such a difficult thing to have. And so I think in some ways it feels like we've taken the hard path of not niching down. But what that's allowed us to do is it's allowed us to create the space where people who want to take on a particular niche can go in there and do that. And that's where each of those key go-to-market areas, at least in the current stage of the market, where we have the creator economy really driving a lot of things. For instance, DeFi, for instance, the NFT and consumer space, for instance, the DAOs and communities. Each of these spaces now has a whole series of teams that are devoted specifically to those spaces. So rather than niching down on the protocol level or on the ecosystem level, what we focused on is empowering other teams to then go out and do what they need to do to take the opportunity that they see. And so yes, it's been a hard slog to get there until now, but that's where spinning out core team members and really supporting them to go out and say, yeah, we're really passionate about building financial tools. Maybe for financial inclusion, maybe for trading, maybe for asset management or anything else. Great. There's space here, and there's a niche for that too. If there are people who are really excited about bridging to Ethereum and really working with the components and the teams that have already built on Ethereum, and now we have Aurora, and that's essentially their goal. It's like how do we sort of work with the existing Ethereum ecosystem, and then in a way that allows them to also take advantage of some of the cool stuff that's happening in near native. So in a way, like I almost kind of not quite reject the premise, but
Yep.
but
The niche is not to be niche.
I mean the niche is not to be niche as an ecosystem. The niche is to empower other people to niche as they want to on top of it, and I think we're actually seeing the benefits of that substantially right now.
So I'm going to continue on that niche conversation, but with a different one. So the area that we've been working a lot at Orchid is what I kind of call Web3 versus most people call Web3 is just let's just call that blockchain. But to me, it's like decentralized services. So it's something that most systems haven't really applied to. You've got stuff like us. You've got Live Peer on Ethereum. You've got a bunch of different kind of people trying to do this. Obviously, Filecoin is its own ecosystem. Have you seen any work in that area, and do you see that as a sort of a potential space, given the usability of Near and how that can make just things a lot faster, cheaper, and easier to do, still decentralized?
Well, decentralized services, obviously, it's a pretty big category. I think one of the examples that I'll cite, it's probably not apples to apples for what you're talking about, but the Near Crowd app on Near is so quick history is the Near team. Originally, Near got its name because of the book Near.ai, because Alex and Ilya are both very, very talented machine learning researchers and engineers. And so originally, they were actually trying to create the singularity. The singularity is Near, and Near.ai was the original company that sort of merged and became the Near blockchain. And so there's still a lot of energy and momentum in the ecosystem around the idea of how do we help support the machine learning community. And so one thing that grew out on top of the ecosystem that is a consumer-facing experience is this app called Near Crowd, which is essentially a mechanical Turk, which right now is creating what I believe is by multiples the single largest machine learning data set for image categorization in the world. Through basically allowing people, primarily right now, I think the communities are mostly in Southeast Asia and India, through allowing people to basically who are consumers who they didn't know about this before and then they had to be onboarded to it, who are basically allowing them to do work categorizing images and then get paid in doing that. And so again, it's maybe not exactly in line with the services that you're talking about, but this has actually been one of the most successful apps that's been built on Near so far, and the fact that it is a marketplace that's being created. I think it's probably going to end up expanding to support more use cases than just machine learning. But that's literally one of the OG use cases built on top of Near.
Cool.
So
any final words for the supporters here?
No. I think I would be interested, though, in your perspective about what makes you the most excited on the way out here over the next 12 months across any ecosystem, across any space. that you want to see built, whether it's startups that you're curious to see, whether it's technologies you're curious to see, or just impact that you're curious to see coming out of this ecosystem?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm yeah. So from an investment perspective, I've been looking a lot at. I'm a bit of an NFT ape myself, so I've been looking a lot at how that's changing the art world, and also how these new communities and kind of a lot of the kind of conventional entertainment world is starting to move into that space. And we've been chatting a lot to the studios in Hollywood and sort of seeing that whole world emerging quite quickly. Again, going back to what I was originally saying, I'm very interested in the decentralizing of the internet in general, of the web. The internet is decentralized theoretically, but just kind of technology like Handshake, which like somewhat forgotten architecture, decentralizing DNS, and that's certainly like a personal sort of passion of mine. Anything from my perspective that improves privacy, decentralization. Kind of like breaking the control structures of centralized entities that I'm really a big fan of. But I think over the next 12 months, we'll see, I hope, a lot of movement out to people who can use these technologies without knowing about them. You're using this technology, but you don't even really know, there's a blockchain behind it, whatever. I don't really care. I'm just getting this ticket, or I'm doing this cool thing that this thing enables me to do. And I'm always on the lookout for things that I don't necessarily know what they're going to be, because it's things that you can do with these technology stacks that you couldn't do previously. Like it's kind of impossible or really cumbersome to do it using a Web 2 architecture or another blockchain. So those are the things that I look for a lot.
Great.
Thanks.
Thanks for the conversation.
Thank you.